The LSU Sports Insider Podcast. Today is Tuesday, April the 1st, and on this podcast, we do not do April Fool's jokes. But I am going to ask you, Koki, what is the best April Fool's joke that you have either played or had played on you?
I don't know. No one's really played an April. I don't remember the last April Fool's joke someone played on me, at least.
Really? Okay.
I'm pretty boring right now. Maybe it's from the lack of sleep that I have, but I'm not.
We
I
figured
can't
this
really
out.
think of anything.
We'll get to this. Koki spent 27 hours at the box this weekend. 27 hours over 3 days. He is Koki Riley. He is the LSU baseball beat writer for The Advocate. I'm Zach Ewing, and this is the LSU Sports Insider Podcast. We are here to talk some baseball. It has been a couple of weeks, and as far as the one I always remember is my mom waking me up early and saying, "Oh, it snowed outside," and I grew up in Albuquerque mountains, so theoretically it could snow on April 1st, and we all get, "Oh my God, we're out of school today," and then you look out the window and you go, "Oh, it's 75 degrees. What are you talking about, Mom?"
That's a good one.
Yeah,
that's a really good one.
I mean, that's the one that always sticks. Or then a couple years ago, my wife mixed M&Ms and Skittles and put them in the same bowl. That sort of stuff.
Okay, yeah.
Mild.
That's very mild. But that's almost like a good surprise, though.
It was not good. I did not enjoy that.
Okay,
yeah.
You don't like M&Ms?
I do. I just don't like them mixed with Skittles.
I guess. Yeah, I guess.
It's not a good mix. Okay. Also not a good mix was rain and baseball. And LSU did sweep Mississippi State this weekend, which is obviously good for the Tigers. And I think they had to overcome quite a bit of adversity to do it, not necessarily on the field, but just in waiting for the dang games to start. Just a quick recap. Thursday was fairly ordinary.
Yep.
An 8-6 victory for LSU. Didn't rain. Got to the ballpark. It was kind of a crazy college baseball game, but they held on, won 8-6. Then the storm started to come, and then the waiting started.
Yeah. I forget how long the delay Friday was, but the game ended. The game started at like 9, and then it ended just after midnight on Friday, which isn't too bad.
No, thankfully you had a quickish 2-1 pitchers duel. LSU wins.
Yeah.
And knowing that there was possibly more rain in the forecast and that everybody was getting home late, LSU thought they were doing the smart thing by moving Saturday's first pitch from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m.
Yeah.
That ended up not being the right thing to do.
I mean, I guess you could have moved it up, but wasn't it raining by around noon or 1 o'clock anyway? So I
really have no memory of this. I can't. Yeah.
Like, to me, it was raining for most that day, even before you got to the night, and then it just rained even more, and there was even more lightning. I think Jay Johnson said in his radio show yesterday that he was really worried that the game was just not going to happen on Sunday, because that's Saturday. I mean,
that's the other thing is the SEC has a rule that even though this was a Thursday through Saturday series, and theoretically you could have played Sunday when the weather was actually pretty good, the SEC has this rule that you have to finish series within 3 days. And so they had to start that game before midnight on Saturday, or it would have just been chopped off the schedule.
The one good thing is that there was no travel curfew. So there's a travel curfew if you play a Friday to Sunday, where you can't play another inning past I think it was 4:30, 5 o'clock.
Because remember, these are student athletes. They have class.
Yes. Yeah. And this was a big deal in the Kentucky A&M series because I think Kentucky was trying to waste time in the ninth inning. So they were trying to waste time in the I think it was the 8th or 9th inning to not let them play the bottom of the ninth and let Texas A&M potentially tie the game, even though it was a 5-run game. So they were just wasting time. And that created a big kerfuffle between the head coaches.
I love it.
Yeah.
I just don't. We have a curfew so that the kids can get to class on Monday, but by Wednesday they're traveling again. What are we doing here? I don't know.
It's silly. It's definitely silly, but so I always say that to say that the game wouldn't have happened on Saturday if it weren't for it being a Thursday to Saturday. So I think that we ended up getting real Pac-12 after dark sicko baseball vibes.
It did turn into that. It was a 4+ hour game.
Yep.
LSU wins it 15-7. Do I have that score right?
18-7.
18-7. Man, I think I went to bed too early before the last 3 runs were scored. Maybe I don't know. Anyway, point being, LSU is now 7-2 in the SEC. So just all of these delays, LSU took care of business, and that's what we want to focus on today. And I think one area you really highlighted, Koki, and we're going to talk about a couple of areas, but the relief pitching, and this is headlined by what I'm calling the law firm of Evans and Cowan.
Yeah.
And these guys have been, frankly, spectacular.
Yeah, they've been absolutely spectacular so far this year. They've given up a combined, I want to say, 2 earned runs and roughly 20 innings, 20 a third, 22 thirds, give or take.
And that, you're talking in SEC play.
Yes, yeah. And that's just in SEC play. And they also basically gave up one of the runs almost on purpose because, like, I like when Cowan was in the game, I think there was like an infield base hit, and then there was runner indifference to get the guy over to second base because they didn't care because they were already up by 6 runs in the 9th inning. So if they were actually like trying in that inning to prevent runs and not just get a couple outs to end the ball game, that'd be 20 and 2/3 and 1 run. So that's basically what it is. Like it's incredible how good those 2 guys have been so far this season. They do it in 2 completely different styles too, which makes it kind of interesting.
Yeah, no doubt. And we have their overall stats on the screen right here. They have combined for 8 saves, a 0.99 ERA. That's 5 earned runs in 45 and a third innings, and 70 strikeouts in those 45 innings. Yeah. So they are both very effective. But I actually think that helps them too, that they do it in different ways. Now, in this case, one was used for 4 innings Thursday, the other was used for 4 innings Friday. They kind of came in that long relief fireman role, and they were both very effective. But in case you do use them back to back in the same game, like you're giving teams a completely different look too.
Yeah, if they ran into a scenario where they could do that, the problem is that this will get into our discussion later about the rest of the bullpen. They don't have enough trust in the rest of the other guys to be like, yeah, let's pair these guys sorted together. And maybe what you could do, I guess, in theory, is one guy throw an inning or 2, have the other guy throw an inning or 2, and then you save him for the rest of the weekend. I guess you could do that. But at the same time, in a 1-run game like that, and someone's going well, like Cowan was on Thursday, for example, where it's a 1-run game in the 6th inning, and you have a guy who can go 4 innings and just shut the door. And I think Cowan gave up 1 single. I think that was it in those 4 innings, despite the fact they were up by 1 run in 3 of those innings, which is insane.
So we're talking high leverage outs that he's
like
getting.
Inning after inning after inning, and he's just mowing them down without breaking a sweat, basically, because he is such a unique pitcher in the fact that his fastball is really only up to 91 miles an hour. He doesn't really hide the ball a ton, and it's not like there's a bunch of crazy movement with the pitch either. So like you can see the ball pretty easily coming out of a fairly normal slot and whatnot. But what makes that fastball work is because the changeup is one of the better changeups probably in the country, at the very least, maybe the best changeup in the country, because I mean he can locate it in situations and spots where you're not supposed to locate it, like right on right changeups. Like you don't really throw. A right-hander pitcher doesn't really throw that many changeups to right-handed hitters because it's just very hard to locate. And the way he can locate that pitch and just the consistency he has with that. And he's also added a little slider, too, that he sort of added to the mix. And you can sort of combine those 2 off-speed pitches and the way he can just command the ball better than anyone else on the staff. That's kind of what has allowed him to just be so dominant since he's arrived here.
Yeah, and like this is a good thing, and we're going to talk about the rest of the bullpen in a second. I do think part of this equation is LSU would really like to get more out of its starters.
Yeah.
All 3 starters, Anderson, Ianson, and Shores, have started 7 games each, and each of them has pitched less than 40 innings. And so, do the math. We're looking at, I think it's more than 35, but less than 40. So it's slightly over 5 innings per start. That's a lot of innings for the bullpen to soak up, especially when we'll talk about it in a minute. It's not that everyone else in the bullpen's been terrible. They haven't. But you would like to maybe make it so that Cowan and Evans can, an inning or 2 instead of 4.
Yeah, that's true. I think like with college baseball, especially, I feel like I've had to sort of rewire my brain to the fact that like these games are more important than major league games.
Right.
So it's actually a little less important that the guy goes 7 innings, and if he just goes 4 or 5, it's more survivable because again, it's less games.
It's
Your more
like,
important games are on the weekend.
They're more a little bit like
Yeah.
like MLB pennant race games or playoff games where
Yeah.
you have to push the abort button on a pitcher. If on a starter, if he's starting to lose it, got to get him out of there because this game, there's only 30 SEC games. Like this game's important.
Yes, it's closer to that than it is to MLB regular season. It's not full tilt like World Series playoffs or LCS sort of like aggressiveness with the bullpen, but it's like kind of somewhere in between that. You know what I mean?
Right. It's like pennant race. Like like September baseball. You got about 30 games left. That's what you have to separate yourself in a tough league, and the added. You only play 3 conference games a week, and so you don't necessarily have to.
And these guys have a week of rest, right, in between. So like that really helps out, and so like because of that, you don't have to have Cade Anderson go 7 innings every time. It would be great if he did, but
that's the thing that like you don't need it every time, but you'd love to have it, especially Cade Anderson, your Friday night guy or Thursday night guy. If he gets 7, that changes the whole complexion of the weekend.
Yeah, and this weekend was pretty easily his worst start, but I'm not terribly concerned about it because the stuff's still really good. He's still finding the strike zone. I don't think teams have necessarily figured him out. I thought he just left a lot of pitches over the middle of the plate, and I think Jay even admitted this during his radio show on Monday. Like the home runs, home runs have been a problem for him so far this year. He's given up 8 and 7 games. I think that's really been the only consistent issue that he's had so far this season. But the way that he can sort of mix and match all of his stuff, fastball, slider, even the curveball, the changeup, and the fact that he hides the ball pretty well. Fastball's been a little bit faster this year, up closer to 94, 95 than 92, 93. So you combine all those sort of elements. As long as he keeps the ball out of he's got to keep the ball out of the middle of the plate. He's got to keep the ball out of the middle of the plate. Those meatballs that are going for home runs. But other than that, I think he's been really, really good. So I think they have their guy at the top, but then I think we can kind of get into the other 2 starters and what they need to do better to sort of help out the bullpen, like you were saying.
So let's talk about the rest of the bullpen because, on one hand, there is some depth there. The stat up on the screen, 8 relievers have an ERA under 4. On the other hand, outside of Cowan and Evans, do you really trust any of those guys with the game on the line?
Yeah, and some of that is that number. There's definitely some funny money with that number because some of those guys have like 7 appearances and 5 of them were against Nicholls State, or you know what I mean. So it's
right. And we should mention LSU does play Louisiana Tech tonight. So they do have a midweek game tonight before they go to Oklahoma this weekend. We'll talk about that later. But yeah. I think that's an important point. It's more than just the ERA. Just look at the usage. Jay Johnson doesn't really trust these guys.
Yeah, if we're just being honest, he just doesn't. And I mean, on Sunday they didn't have Cowan or Evans, so they kind of had to do this Johnny Holstaff potpourri sort of bullpen situation, and it wasn't as disastrous as it was in the Saturday game in the Texas series, which we can dive into that piece of it too, because that was probably the most like red lights flashing, glaring moment when it came to this bullpen. But it wasn't great either. Connor Ware threw a scoreless inning, which was nice, which was good to see, but I'm a little surprised that they're not trusting him even more. I think part of that's because of some of the command issues, like he walked 2 batters in that scoreless inning. And Jaden New threw 2 scoreless innings at the end, which he might be a guy who's moving up the charts a little bit here, because he started the last 2 midweek games, did fairly well. I think he's 1 run in 7 innings in those appearances, or maybe 2. And then this 2-inning relief appearance against Mississippi State. Granted, it was at 1 a.m. and the game was probably already over to that point, but he came in a jam, got out of the jam pretty easily, and then shut the door in the 9th inning. And I don't think he walked anyone. He's got a nice little sinker to go along with his fastball. Like he's a really, really interesting guy, because he basically didn't pitch for 2 years, and he was the number 1 pitcher in California coming out of high school via perfect game. So you're like, all right, when you bring a guy like that with his caliber of as a recruit, like you'd think, okay, he's could be a weekend starter for this team by right now, but he's been out for so long. He's kind of been lost in the shuffle, and now all of a sudden it looks like he's right back in the shuffle.
When you come in at 1:00 in the morning in an 11-run game, there is pressure just from this standpoint. If you walk somebody and extend the game unnecessarily, you might get cut on the spot. Like, I don't, Jay's a pretty chill guy most of the time, but like at 1 a.m., I'm going to be like, buddy, you better be throwing strikes. We're up by 11. So there is some pressure there.
I think the game was closer when he came in, and then they scored like 4 or 5 runs to extend it to 9 or something like that. Yeah, but like there were a couple times in the game where I was like, all right, Mississippi State could get back into this, because we were hovering around 6-4 runs for a while there.
I guess in my mind, when you said 1 a.m., I'm thinking it was the very end of the game, and 1 a.m. wasn't the end of the game.
No.
We still had an hour to go.
Yeah.
So that was the crazy weekend. One reason why the Johnny Holstaff approach worked on Sunday, or Saturday, Saturday and Sunday, is because LSU was scoring so many runs, and that has been a pleasant surprise for this team in SEC play. So we're going to talk about that and look forward to the Oklahoma series. First, we're going to take a quick break here on the LSU Sports Insider Podcast. Be back in 30 seconds.
There's no better place to parlay than Caesars Sportsbook. With quick picks, you can tap right into pre-built, ready-to-bet parlays right from the home screen. And if you miss tip-off, no worries. You can play same-game parlays live during the action. Plus, it's never been easier to find and bet on the biggest matchups of the day, so you can keep up with all the action. Caesars Sportsbook, proud partner of the NBA and the only sportsbook app with Caesars Rewards. Download it today.
Back on the LSU Insider Sports Podcast, talking LSU baseball with beat writer Koki Riley. Lots of women's basketball stuff over the last week. We are going to kind of wrap that up on Thursday's show, so check that out. Reed Darcy and Scott Rabley will be here. Some Smith in the transfer portal, so that's big news this morning.
Yeah, that surprised me.
And LSU obviously is in on some big names trying to get incoming transfers. So we're going to kind of wrap up this year's LSU women's basketball season and look forward to next year. We've also got, of course, spring football still going on. Teams on spring break right now, but they will resume spring football when they come back. And and obviously lots of baseball and softball to come. You can subscribe to the LSU Tigers at NOLA.com YouTube channel. That is the best way to get all of our videos and podcasts. Sign up for notifications and hit the like button down there while you're at it. So, Koki, we said this before the break. The LSU offense, you heard us say a month or two ago, like, yeah, this is a good offense. They're gonna make the pitcher work. They're gonna take their walks. There's gonna be traffic on the base paths every inning. They might not hit a lot of home runs. Well, now they're seeing the ball go over the wall like they're the New York Yankees.
They're hitting the ball out of the park a lot more.
13 homers in 9 SEC games.
Yeah.
It's not like an outrageous amount, but I think it's more than we thought, and it's coming from, probably importantly, more sources than we thought.
Yeah. I think we should definitely point out, too, that the weather's gotten better for home runs. Sure. The wind has played a part in a good amount of these home runs at home, at least. But at the same time, like, I didn't think Derek Carriel would have 3 home runs by now. I didn't think Daniel Dickinson would have 7 or whatever he has right now. I didn't think Jared Jones would have 10. Honestly, I thought he'd maybe have more than 10. But Stephen Milam has 5 or 6.
Luis Hernandez has 4 home runs just in SEC games.
Yeah, and he has none in the other games, which kind of is a good example of like how, all right, it takes time for the bats to warm up. It takes time for the freaking weather to warm up and for the wind to sort of push those balls out. Like, I think that's a really good stat to show sort of the importance of those external factors and to show the importance of, like, guys just getting more comfortable as the season goes along. The hitting usually catches up to the pitching. You see this in the major leagues too, right? So this team's hitting for more power, but they're not sacrificing the doubles or the batting average or the on-base percentage or any of those things that were was generating offense in the non-conference play either, right? Mm-hmm. Like, they lead the SEC in batting average, they lead the SEC in doubles still, I believe. They're not really striking out a whole ton. They're walking as much as anybody in the country. So, like, they're doing all the other things you want to do well. They're also playing small ball. They're bunting all the time, which sometimes I think that's not the smartest decision. So, like, for
never
example,
bunt. Hashtag never bunt.
Yeah, I'm more on hashtag never bunt team than bunt all the time team. I'll just say that. Like there was one situation where like Derek Coryell, to lead off the game with 2 strikes, tried to lay down a bunt, which I just thought was like, what are you doing? Like the guy's hitting 400 and
bunting for a hit's a little bit different, but with 2 strikes,
with 2 strikes as the leadoff guy, like what that was like, what are we doing? And then he homered at his next at bat, so it was like even further. They won the game anyway, so it didn't matter. But that was this one small example of where I was like, what are we doing here? But anyway, they've laid down like a whole ton of suicide squeezes and safety squeezes this year. They've put themselves in rundown situations with 2 outs and runners in the corners where the runner at first tries to get into a rundown between first and second to allow the runner from third to score. Like they've done that a whole ton this year. So they've scored runs in every conceivable way. And with the home runs catching up, it is creating a sense of optimism where all of this is sustainable, where they don't really have a weakness in not just the way that they're scoring runs, but also the depth of the lineup, which we can get into that as well.
When Jay Johnson was hired, probably the reason to be the most optimistic was the way he has coached offense throughout his career. I mean, every lineup the guys had, look back at his Arizona days.
For maybe last year.
Yeah, look back before that. His teams hit. And then he comes in here, and of course he's got a team, with Tommy White and Dylan Cruz and just a tremendous lineup. And so, they hit, and you're like, okay, well, he had the Jimmies and Joes. Last year's team, like you said, not quite up to that standard. Now we're back, and you're kind of seeing what a Jay Johnson offense looks like. Like you said, they can score runs. They can hurt you in so many ways. They'll draw walks. They don't strike out a ton. They hit home runs. They're going to steal bases. They're even going to do some bunting. And okay, like if you got a runner on second, nobody out, and that's the winning run, and you have, kind of a weaker hitter at the plate, I'm okay with bunting. And other than that, let the guy swing away. But I point being, this LSU team is really tough on a pitching staff.
Yeah. I mean, the number 9 hitter is hitting like 310, in Chris Stanfield, and he's hitting well in like conference play. This isn't just non-conference funny money going on.
And I'm not trying to knock Chris Stanfield because this is not the type of player he is, but he is the only guy in the regular lineup who does not have a home run this year. So 8 of those guys can hurt you with the long ball too.
And, because I mean, like they have a little platoon going on at third base, and especially when a right-handed pitcher's in the game, they'll have Tanner Reeves who's hitting closer to 400 than he is to 300 right now. Michael Braswell's the only guy whose numbers this season you look at and you're like, that's not great. But at the same time, like he's been hitting the ball better in conference play than he did in non-conference play, and this was kind of the case last year as well. So really, up and down the lineup, there's really not a lot of guys that you can point at like that's a weakness. I think Josh Pearson's like struggled a little bit more in conference play than he did in non-conference play, but you put in an Ethan Fry in at DH instead, and Ethan Fry is hitting home runs and hitting around 400 and mashing left-handed pitching. Mm-hmm. So it's not only that there's depth and it's 1 through 9 where you have someone who isn't an automatic out. It's also guys you can plug in given the matchup. You can plug in a Tanner Reeves when a righty's on the mound. You can plug in an Ethan Fry when a lefty's on the mound, and those guys are going to hit just as well, if not better, than the platoon guys that they're playing with. And like Jake Brown isn't starting all the time because they're facing so many left-handed pitchers. But he's still playing really good ball. Like I think he had 2 or 3 hits on Saturday. Like again, it hasn't been perfect in every single game because offense in baseball is too hard to be scoring 7-8 runs in every single game. Right. We've seen that a couple times, like game 3 of the Texas series, game 2 of this series. But at the same time, they still made Pico Cone work in that outing. 2 runs in 5 innings. They got him out of there after the 5th. They probably should have jumped on the reliever Stone Simmons a little bit more. But Simmons, I thought his stuff was actually pretty decent. So I want to give him a pass for that, but it wasn't easy either. But then to sort of bounce back after that and score 17 runs where in a day where you kind of need a big day from the offense, I thought that was absolutely That was just really, really impressive to see. And statistically, they have one of the best offenses in the country, and they probably have one of the deepest lineups, if not the deepest lineup in the nation as well. So it looks pretty good from the offensive side. Not a lot to complain about.
The competition level steps up this weekend.
Yes.
The Tigers go to Norman, Oklahoma. You go to Norman, Oklahoma tomorrow for a Thursday through Saturday series. This is a top 10 matchup per D1 baseball. LSU is number 7. Kind of punished severely for a series loss at Texas, but you kind of get it because all the teams up there are winning. And if you lost a series to Texas, they slotted them behind Texas.
Yeah.
And you kind of get it. So they're 7th. Oklahoma is 10th. So this is like a super regional type matchup. 7 versus 10 would be the seeding. Oklahoma is 5-4 in SEC play. They just lost a series at Alabama, but this is a good team, and obviously LSU's probably biggest test since they played Texas.
Alabama's looked really good this year, and they went on the road to Tuscaloosa, and the other lost 2 out of 3, but every game was like by 1 or 2 runs. Every game was super duper close. They also beat Virginia and Oregon State in the non-conference play. Those are 2 pretty decent
with
wins.
Dallas Baptist.
Yes.
Yep.
The Dallas Baptist thing is actually kind of interesting because they actually lost 11-0 to them at one point, which was kind of crazy. But that's their only non-conference loss.
Yeah, and they turned around and beat them, I think, 11-2. So it's very different.
This
games.
is a good team. Like they're not super physical offensively. They don't really hit a lot of home runs, but they're putting the ball in play. I think probably a little bit more than a lot of people expected them to heading into this year. And then on the pitching side, they have one of the best pitchers in the country in Kyson Witherspoon. That's going to be a really big challenge for this offense. And the goal for them is probably going to be to get him out of the game as quickly as possible. Their bullpen's not bad either. They can sort of mix with left-handed. They can mix with left and right-handers. And it's going to be a really interesting series. So I don't think we're going to have as many rain delays as long as there's not that much lightning.
Oh, you said it. Yeah. You
knock on wood, as I just did there. But
it's April in Oklahoma, man. You might have some really gnarly weather.
It's a turf field, which is a good thing. So as long as it's, even if it's raining a decent amount, you can just play right through it because you don't really have that, slip and slide factor as much when you're playing on the turf. So yeah, I mean, at one point, Cam Johnson, former LSU Tiger, was in the rotation. He is now the midweek starter, I believe. And they've replaced him with another lefty, Kate Crossland. And then Kyson Witherspoon and his brother, Malachi Witherspoon, is the Sunday starter. So you're going to face Witherspoon squared this weekend. And, and they have some pretty good arms. So, the pitching is it's going to be a good challenge for the offense at the very least this weekend.
Kyson and Malachi. Points for creativity.
Yeah.
Difficult series. And maybe the game times are 6 p.m. Thursday, 6:30 p.m. Friday, 2 p.m. Saturday. And then LSU is back on the road the following weekend at Auburn before coming home to face Alabama on Easter weekend. This is... we talked about this. Let's zoom this out and go big picture to wrap up here, Koki. Like this, and it's funny to say because you played Texas, who's now I think number 6 in the country. You're playing Oklahoma, who's number 10 in the country. Remember what we said with Joe Healy of D1 Baseball when we previewed the SEC. This is the easy half of the schedule, because later on you get Tennessee, you get Arkansas. Get Texas A&M, who I know is really struggling right now, but they kind of remind me of LSU last year.
I mean, 1-8 and like 500 overall. Like it's even worse.
At some point, they're going to figure it out. Like that's not. You got to go to A&M. I don't think you can go. We're going to go mop up the Aggies. Like I'd be careful thinking that way. Yeah, I mean, in a month from now, they may be playing a lot better. We'll see.
Yeah.
So this is the easy half of the schedule, but so far. LSU's on track. I know they lost the series at Texas. We haven't had a podcast since then, so we can mention that a little bit. I mean, you mentioned the Saturday game. Like that's the one that sticks in your craw.
3 2/3 innings, 8 earned runs for the bullpen.
Yeah. You don't expect to go into Austin and sweep Texas.
Yeah.
But you'd love to win that series. That's the one that got away. But they sweep the other 2 series. They take care of business at home against Mizzou and Mississippi State. Now they go to Oklahoma. Like so far, they are right on pace for what they want to do.
Yeah, I think the first half has been maybe a tad harder than we thought it was going to be, and the second half's been a tad easier because of the A&M thing, as we mentioned, and the South Carolina thing. South Carolina's 188 in conference play. It's not going
so
great.
You do have a couple of your two road, and the other 3 series in the second half are all at home. So it's kind of like those 2 road series look easier than maybe we thought.
Yeah.
At least now.
But these 2 road series look a little bit tougher than we thought because I didn't think Oklahoma would be a top 10 team going into this weekend. I did not expect that. That was not on my bingo card. But I also, Auburn's ranked right now too, and my guess is they'll probably be ranked by next week as well. So they've had some decent performances, some pretty good wins. So I like those 2 series are maybe a little bit harder, and the Texas series was probably harder than we thought it was going to be. But then they've also had some series that have been easier than we thought it was going to be, like Mississippi State being 1-8 in conference play, right? And stuff like that happening. And their schedule overall has not been that hard compared to a lot of these other SEC teams. Let's just face it. Like they only have 3 wins period against ranked teams. 1 against Texas, 1 against DBU, and 1 against
K-State's ranked now.
And Kansas State, because Kansas State's ranked now, which that's going to help them moving forward with the RPI, because Kansas State being 8-1 in conference play, like that's definitely going to help them. But anyway, like if you look at it like that, then you realize, oh wait, they only have 3 losses, but 2 of them are against Texas. So it's like, their schedule really hasn't been that hard yet. So I think this weekend and next weekend, the next really 4 to 5 weekends are all against ranked teams, right? You have Auburn after this Oklahoma weekend. You have Alabama after that, and Alabama's a top 10 team, and that's here. Then you have Tennessee, which is the number 1 team in the country easily. That's also here. And then after that, it's A&M. But
then Arkansas.
And then Arkansas, right?
They're the number 2 in the country.
Yeah, they're the number 2 team in the country. So
they're going to get a chance to prove it.
Exactly.
But it's a good point. Only 3 ranked wins to this point. Now, taking care of business with sweeps is a great thing to do.
Exactly.
When you get a bad, I say bad, like Missouri excluded. There's no bad team in the SEC, but like if you get one of those weaker teams at home, and we always talk, Koki, about how like the SEC, any team can come up and beat you. This is kind of turning in. Now, it's only been 3 conference series, but it's turning into a year of the haves and the have-nots, where you've got Mizzou 0-9, but you've also got South Carolina 1-8, Mississippi State 1-8, Texas A&M 1-8. Like maybe that will change, but right now it's like maybe who takes care of those teams, not just with series wins, but with sweeps, is the team that will have a leg up at the end.
Yeah.
But I do agree with you. This is a big litmus test in Norman for this team.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I think Oklahoma and LSU are the only teams with their own records, which kind of tells you how polarizing it's been a little bit. Like LSU is the only 7-2 team because there's 4 8-1 teams. Georgia, which is hitting the ball as hard and as well as anybody in the country right now.
Scary team, man.
Yeah, they can't really pitch, but it hasn't mattered that much because they just hit the ball and hit so many home runs. It hasn't seemed to matter. Texas, who we've already seen, and then Tennessee and Arkansas, which we thought were going to be great, and they've been great. So, and LSU will play them later this year, so those will be great litmus tests for the Tigers. But in some ways, I understand if some people are like, they punish them too much for 1 loss, which is basically what they did, right? Because if LSU wins that series on the road,
hung on to that game on that Saturday, they're still number 2 in the country.
Yeah, I'm not saying they deserved to win that game because they didn't, given the way that they played in the second half of that game. But at the same time, like you could argue that, like, all right, what if you just pitch Case and Evans when you're up 7-6, and now all of a sudden you win that game instead of lose that game, and then now they're a top 5 team again, right? So, but you could argue that.
Yeah, the margins are so thin up there.
Yeah,
because everybody else is winning.
Yeah.
It's not like one of these years where everybody seems to drop a game here and there. It's not happening.
No.
And so
Tennessee dropped those 2 games in a row, the midweek game to East Tennessee State, and then 1 game to Alabama, and they've been just as dominant after that.
Yeah.
So
we'll see a lot of good baseball to come. Koki will be there. Hopefully not for 27 hours a weekend, but he will be there to cover it all. Tonight against Louisiana Tech, in Norman this weekend against Oklahoma, next weekend against Auburn.
We don't want rain. Yeah, I love being at the park, but I really don't like rain at the park.
And then finally back home for a little while after that. Koki, we have not potted since opening day for Major League Baseball, so be remiss to ask you who's your World Series pick, man. You taking your Red Sox?
Ooh, given the way that they're playing right now, it's hard to say that.
Oh, come on, it's been 4 games.
It's true. They're 1-5, and Devers has struck out like 10 times.
He
in
is
15 at bats.
broken, but yeah.
But anyway, you got to pick the Dodgers just because they're too good. On the NL side, at least. Then the AL side it's anyone's game
The American
right now.
League is wide open.
It is wide open. But I like Texas. I think a lot of regression to the mean in a good way for them offensively, and then they got a lot of talented pitchers, even if some of those guys have injury concerns. So I kind of like the Rangers this year at the AL, but I don't feel good about that at all.
All right, he's on the record. Dodgers, Rangers. I said before opening day I'd taken the Braves, who are winless right now. So I had taken Braves and Red Sox. Braves over Red Sox.
Okay.
So, both of them are off to terrible starts.
Yeah.
But I'm going to believe in the power of the long season and say they'll figure it out, especially the Braves who will get Ronald Acuna and Spencer Strider
They got
back.
158 games left. So they'll probably be okay.
The 1998 Yankees, who won a record 125 games between 114 in the regular season and then 11 in the playoffs, they started, I believe, 0-4 or 1-4. So, I mean, this first week really doesn't necessarily mean anything.
Yeah.
So it's a long season. Not the college season, not quite as long. We're more than halfway through the regular season. Again, Koki will be there every step of the way. You can check his stuff out at theadvocate.com/LSU leading into the Oklahoma series and then all weekend from Norman. We will be back Thursday with another podcast. Our producer today was not Amelia Cotton. It is Amelia LaCour. Congratulations to her. She's been out a couple of weeks. Leave your congrats in the comments for Amelia. He's Koki Riley. I'm Zach Ewing, and this has been the LSU Sports Insider.